All right, we'll reopen this board meeting.
Yeah, the other ones, select ones.
Could I ask that someone please move the consent agenda? Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Stoner. Favor, any opposed, motion carried. Any business arising from the minute? Seeing none. 6.1, Area Directors Committee recommendations of January 15th. Could I ask someone please to move the recommendation?
I would be pleased to move that recommendation.
Moved by Director Birch Jones, seconded by Director Rainbow. Comments?
Good work by the staff on this. Thank you.
All in favor? Opposed, motion carried. 7.1. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
With your request for this decision on a service establishment amendment bylaws to adjust the maximum tax requisitions. And there are many, and I imagine we can't do them all at once. Wow. Look at that, Director Richmond, you get your wish. Are there any questions for staff? We have staff here to answer any questions anyone may have on what this looks like.
Are we gonna pass all these at once?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll move that. No, I got.
Is there a question there, Director Mayor?
Baylor Radio and Television Repeater System. The Baylor community is looking at dissolving it. They don't need it anymore.
Oh, okay.
So I'd like to know the context of dissolving tax service. There's gotta be a policy on it.
Through the chair, we can bring something back to you on that. I do know that we brought this same request to increase this last year and it was the same update, so we did not bring it. We hadn't received an update, so that's why we brought it back this time, but if you would like to move the other six,
Yeah,
then do that whatever.
Yeah, at this time, I don't want the increase.
Yep.
The rest I will.
Okay, so can we be specific on which one we're pulling? It's the television repeater, 1893. Okay, so we are going to consider moving 1891, 1892, 1894, 1895, 1896, 1897. We can do second, third, and adoption of all of those at once. So excluding the 1895, no, 1893. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
We're gonna move them.
Moved by Director Stoner, seconded by Director Mayor. Comment? All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Great.
Thank you.
How easy.
Yeah.
Okay. We're just bringing in staff for 7.2.
We have a commitment this year that more staff will presence for meetings. It is much faster to click on Zoom than
I just want to go back.
What's okay?
Do we need a motion for the staff to bring back a policy on dissolving a,
Director LaFrance is still here.
Oh, okay.
I think Colin said that that's what
They were going to anyway.
he said he was gonna bring it back, but do we need a motion for that?
Director LaFrance, do you need a motion to request that staff bring back that tax service for dissolution?
Dissolving the tax service.
Yeah, what's the process is the question.
Yeah, Suzanne LaFrance, Director of Finance. We don't have a process, so right now we'll have to develop something.
And
Okay.
would you like a motion for it?
Sure, because it'll add some work, so we'll have to try to slot that in somewhere.
Okay. Moved by Director Demare, seconded by Director Mack. Question?
Is this something that we would put into like strategic planning or something, or is it small enough you just say do it and go?
I think it's small enough. I don't think it's something that's gonna come up very often. For now. If it becomes an issue, we'll deal with the issue at that time. That's okay. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And we're now on 7.2, and this is an SLRD Regional Growth Strategy Review of 2024 Amendment Bylaw for second reading, third reading, and adoption. And we have Ms. Dewar here. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Claire Dewar. I'm a senior planner here at the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District. I will give a really high level overview of sort of where we are at from first reading, and then be happy to take any questions the board might have. So we are presenting the RGS amendment bylaw for second, third, and adoption. The board gave first reading in November, and we did receive feedback from the board, and I can highlight some of the feedback that was received and how it was incorporated into the bylaw. So the SLRD board feedback suggested adding emissions to the net zero term to help clarify intent of the policies. And the SLRD board feedback also suggested adding IPCC in front of best science to help clarify intent of the policy. As well as feedback included adding language to strengthen the policies to ensure climate action centers on net zero emissions rather than carbon offsets. So we did add to the climate action section of the bylaw, the strategic directions 11.1. We added emissions and IPCC, and we also added some clarifying language around emissions rather than carbon offsets as suggested. The other piece that was added was net zero emissions definition as well as an IPCC definition. So those are the changes from first reading. I would also like to just highlight that indicator monitoring, this came up through our work with our member municipalities, that indicator monitoring is planned for 2025 following the OPS review. And this monitoring will also help any potential indicator review by highlighting gaps and opportunities there. And finally, just wanted to touch on that we do have thoughts to a prioritization and implementation work to come out of this process. And that staff will be coming back to the board with an approach following this project. And I'm happy to leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Question? Go ahead.
When you do come back to the board, and thank you for this work, could you bring a little more information on the indicator monitoring and how it's going in the future? I'm super curious about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, through the chair, we will be putting out a request for proposals this month, and then hope to have that indicator monitoring take place in 2025, and we would report back to the board in December would be the tentative timeline on that.
Okay. Any other questions from anyone else? Okay, I will consider a motion.
We'll move second and third reading and adoption.
I think you can only do them once at each.
Oh, we have a meeting separate here. Okay, I'll move second.
Second reading moved by Director Richmond, second by Director Birch Jones. Comments? Go ahead, Director Pettendale.
Just appreciate the inclusion of all the feedback, and I think it's made for a stronger RGS, and it's an exciting RGS, so glad to be moving forward with it.
Great. Go ahead, Director Herford.
Yeah, thank you. The feedback from the board at first reading, I think, was clearly articulated how it was changed from incorporated, which makes this very easy to submit. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Can someone please move third reading? Moved by Director Birch Jones, second by Director Stoner. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. And motion to adopt. Moved by Director Rainbow, second by Director Pettendale. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. This is exciting work. Great job.
Feel good to get to this point.
Okay. We are now on 7.3. In Whistler, we call it the SMOO legislation, but everyone calls it something a little different. I'll turn it over to you on the small scale multi-unit housing legislation bill 44. Over
Thank
to you.
you. So my name is Claire Dewar. I'm a senior planner at the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District. I will give a brief overview of the request for decision report regarding the SMU legislation and sort of how we need to respond to some new information from the province. So as the board was involved with the process to adopt the SMU bylaws back in June of 2024, we met that provincial deadline. And we also, as part of that process, submitted an extension application for North Britannia, given water capacity and fire protection service issues. And then back in the fall of 2024, we learned from the province that they did not consider the SLRD master plan communities, which are Britannia Beach, Furry Creek, and Porto Cove. They did not consider those subject to the additional densities, which is at 3 to 6 units. And as they were not considered as part of an urban containment boundary for the purposes of the SMU legislation. So this meant that the North Britannia extension is no longer required, and it has also meant that we need to amend the Area D zoning bylaw to remove the additional densities that were added to 2 zones in the Furry Creek neighborhood. Just wanted to also remind the board that there is a ministerial order that now exempts all zoning bylaws made for the purposes of SMU from requiring approval under the Transportation Act, and we also are prohibited from holding public hearings. Notice of the proposed or of the amendment bylaw was provided in the Peak and the Chief news magazines, and we did receive no public submissions related to amendment bylaw 1887-2025. So it is being presented for consideration of 3 readings and adoption. I just want to take a moment to highlight this new information that we received from the province. As I mentioned, the provincial staff determined that our master plan communities don't meet that the urban boundary definition, so we are no longer required to consider these additional densities. Specifically, we are looking to remove these densities from the FCR3 and the CD3 zones. What this means is that the FCR3 zone will continue to permit single-family dwelling, secondary suites, duplex lock-up suites, and accessory dwelling units. So the duplex lock-up suites and accessory dwelling units were added forms that were brought in response to this new legislation, but we will have a maximum of 2 dwelling units per parcel. And then the CD3 zone is unaffected, as townhouses and apartments were already provided for under this zoning. I think there is an opportunity here to just highlight alignment with the regional growth strategy and this determination from the province. Our regional growth strategy supports development and increased densities within the comprehensive development zones in the SLRD master plan communities. And through that comprehensive development planning process, you have the ability to secure the appropriate servicing, fire protection, transportation, and community amenities that are needed to develop complete communities and smart growth. And this amendment bylaw is aligned with the RGS bylaw by focusing the additional densities to those comprehensive development zones rather than the existing zones that are within the master plan communities. And I'll leave it there and happy to answer any questions the board may have. I know this has almost been a year since we were looking at these bylaws. We're all trying to get refreshed on where those got left off.
Excellent, thank you. Question, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think you almost got at my question with the last piece, but I'm just looking for a bit more clarity. So because the SMU, we thought we had to make a bunch of changes. We made them. Turns out some of them we didn't have to make. We're rolling them back, but we could have just left the changes. So in the cases where we are rolling back, can you provide a little more clarity on why we wouldn't have just stuck with the changes in the additional density? Like, would it have put us beyond fire capacity in all these places, or what's the reason we're
Yes, thank you. So through the chair, and this really, the CD3 zone, which is the Furry Creek, neighborhood, the zone that we worked through in 2021, we felt like we had to reflect the provincial, policy manual and the requirements for those additional densities on lots, even though we provided for well beyond the densities that they were recommending. Really, they're getting at zones that are limited to single family dwellings, which was not that comprehensive development zone. And it added a layer of complication to the sort of existing use and form package that we put forward. I will say that we did remove the floor space ratios from that zone, as was recommended in the provincial policy manual. So we still did do some overall sort of thinking about how can we get more flexible about what lands on lots, and sort of think of that massing rather than floor space ratio and whatnot. Specific to the FCR3 zone, and also that Britannia North extension, it felt like we were told we didn't have a choice, and it wasn't. I think staff were happy to receive the information from the province that the master plan communities that don't have that servicing and fire protection in place, and it isn't being planned for through that comprehensive process, that we aren't required to add those additional densities. We still have added ADUs, which I think is a really useful and applicable built form for these spaces to consider. And the other thing I'll add in that one Fur Creek zone in particular, we have received lots of inquiries, and there isn't a level of complication there because there are existing building schemes and covenants that likely trump our zoning anyways, but it just adds a level of complication and complexity for staff and the public to try and weigh into, rather than just saying we have those 2 units now that you're allowed, rather than just 1 plus a suite. The 3 to 4 units would be very challenging to build out given the current fire service, and I think it keeps it more straightforward for the public to understand if we pull back that additional density piece. Now that we're not being told we have to. I think that would have been staff's recommendation from the beginning.
Just ask about communication to the communities. I don't, Furry Creek and Port Cove, I don't think there's an issue there, but in Britannia, there was certainly some interest in getting involved and building things and so on. So do we need to tell them now that they can't, or?
Thank you. So for clarification through the chair, there is no change proposed for Britannia. Any of the Britannia beach zones have not changed since our bylaws were adopted in June. And that is because we already added what was required for the two of the 3 Britannia beach zones, and the third is where we applied for that extension because there was not water capacity to provide for any additional density. We have also been told by our building official that it would be very hard for any of those densities to be built given our current fire service. So there's a lot of limiting factors there.
So if somebody were interested and they came and asked the question, they just get the answer of that. Okay, thanks.
And I will say though, we are seeing public and building permits come forward now that have more flexibility with this move to setbacks and height rather than and this focus on like sort of the overall massing rather than gross floor area and some of these other pieces that did actually affect what people could build. So there has been some changes that are being acted on already.
Yeah, thank you.
I feel like all the questions have been asked. Would someone move the first, second, and third reading, please? Moved by Director Stoner, second by Director Rainbow. Comment? All in favor? Opposed, motion carries. And then we motion to adopt, moved by Director Rainbow, second by Director Herford. Comment? Go ahead.
Just briefly, thank you for to staff for their work on this file. I know this sort of mandate coming from the province has been challenging to grapple with in all the contexts of across the province and particularly here. So thank you for making some sense of this and taking us through the process. Happy to have it behind us.
All in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Carries. Thank you. We're on 8.1 CAO verbal update.
Hi, everyone. Heather Paul, CAO, SLRD. Just one thing, little housekeeping. It is that time of year again to discuss and make a decision on whether or not we do a roadshow of a board meeting. This year it is north. So we would need direction from the board to do that work. There's a couple of details. The preferred times are usually either May or July meetings, but the staff would like to work on. Recognizing that we can't get to all the places. There always is a demand to go into more remote places, but there's an intense demand on network availability and internet because of our streaming. So it will likely be back at Lillooet at the beautiful community center and pool there.
Excellent.
And just another information, because you'll see this reflected in the budget, that it is about a $10,000 cost for these shows to bring staff and all the and that doesn't include all the staff work to set it up. But of course, the benefit to extending to the community is also there. So it would be a motion for staff to begin the work to we will host the board meeting in, I think the preference is May because July is a time. Yeah.
So I noticed you said the most likely place is Lillooet. Does that mean that area A is completely out of it?
There's nowhere for us to stay there.
Pardon?
There's nowhere for us to stay there.
We managed to what we
yeah.
did, no, we had one there a few years ago and we started off in Goldbridge, I believe, and we stayed at Seaton at the new, what was there, the new hotel. So.
As I've been informed, internet services is an issue, but I can also ask Director Belsham to speak towards it.
Thank you. Through the chair, Angela Belsham, Director of Legislative Services. Due to our legislative requirement to live stream meetings, ensuring that we have adequate internet is essential and has proven to be a bit of a challenge when we go to travel to some of the more remote areas. So we could certainly, based on the direction from the board, start putting some staff resources into exploring what the options are as far as locations to host a meeting outside of Lillooet.
Yeah, just in these that I've been involved in so far, they've always been two-part. One is the meeting itself, which is what we can say, and then there's the tour part. So I think that approach is going to stand for this as well. So then if the meeting has to happen in Lillooet, for instance, like there'll be some portion that will be a tour or something along those. Is that what we're thinking? Just to sort of cover off what I think Director Ring was getting at.
Thank you. Yes, and it really is discretion of the board. Right now, the design has been the next day how it more moves into a tour. It is also could be considered that we just have the meeting one day and the rest of it takes place at the SLRD. It could decrease accommodation costs depending on where we are. Really is at the discretion of the board.
Rather than Sal, go ahead and then what do you think?
I'll go to Starlink to give me used.
Rather than solving this now, we ask that staff come back with recommendations.
Yeah.
So
Lots of them.
can I have someone make that motion? Director Bertram, second by Director Richmond. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
What we didn't do was ask the question of the board about how committed are you to doing this? Because we rarely had 100% attendance. No, but you know, are we committed to 2 days in the north?
Well, the dates are fixed in our board meeting schedule, so travel is gonna conflict for people. Some people can't leave their home for 2 full days.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
I was just gonna ask if we're fully committed to it needing to be the May meeting, or if there's wiggle room there for April or June,
Yeah. Thank you.
or if that's something that can come back, that's fine.
I've been informed that April would be very tight for investigating that, once anything can be possible. June, May and July was given to me, but we can come back with, the motion could be to move forward
Spring
with it.
meeting.
Spring meeting, I believe, what's the notice that requirement? For 30 days. For a change of location.
Yeah, we are fine because we already have the date booked. It's just around communicating to the public where the location is. So whenever we do offsite meetings, we do that through the newspaper, on our website, through social media to ensure we're meeting all of our notice requirements. So the date will be fixed as was approved by the board in 2024, it's just the location. So we've got plenty of time for that.
Okay, staff are gonna come back with a recommendation. Anything else for you?
That's it.
Okay.
Just need a motion for that.
Motion to receive, moved by Director Hoffel, seconded by Director Stoner, all in favor, any opposed, motion carries. 8.2, Early Development Applications Report. You're just here for questions? Okay, question, Director Demare.
Yeah, on page 2, at the bottom. Let me bring it back up. Very last one, November 30th, 2023. That's one of the fire loss properties, and I'm just wondering, and the one next to it on page 3, top one. They're both fire loss properties. And it says waiting for response from the province for the area A riparian assessment. Are they still waiting? Or have they gone to the new program where they can apply to have it on the same footprint?
I'm not certain about that one specifically. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, there's two of
We can update at the, update if that's okay.
Yeah, there's 2 of them. One on the
Is
on the
Russell
next
chair?
page, the first one. But those are the only 2. Okay, thank you.
Chair Matt, I have a question.
Yes.
Is there any way that in that second column under electoral area, you can make the font a little bit bigger? Because I have to get out my lighting glass to find that there's not very many bees, but I always look for them. I don't know if you can do it, but I'd be deeply grateful. That is my question.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Director Rainbow.
When it says inactive for more than a year, and there's a letter of note, does that mean we're saying to them, we're cutting it out? Or?
For the chair, that's correct.
Oh, thank you.
Move receipt.
Move receipt by Director Richards, seconded by Director Birch Jones. Comments?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thanks for the report. These are excellent.
Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, 8.3. ALC non-farm use application. And this is on a property in Area C. Correct. Okay, so we have staff here to answer questions if necessary. Director Mack, do you have a question?
No, I was just going to make a motion to move option 1. Staff presentation.
Okay, and that is to reject the application, but forward the application to the ALC for further consideration.
Yes.
Okay. Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Demare. Comments? Do you have a question?
Yeah, I just, can someone remind me of why we do that as opposed to if we're not supportive, why we just wouldn't take option 2 of not forwarding it? Like, what's the reason to go to the ALC anyways?
Staff?
Thank you, Chair. I believe the ALC can still make that decision to accept the application despite our lack of support. In which case it would come back to us for a temporary use permit application.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer your question?
Well, so if we didn't give it to them, we would just kill it here by doing one, then we give the ALC the option to override us, or they could just override us either way. And it doesn't matter, I guess that's what I'm not clear.
But it helps inform their decision if
Okay.
they're,
Yeah, it
Okay.
says this is your ballpark, but
this
we're
is
not.
where the
sure.
local government sits.
Okay, so with that, unless there are further comments or questions, I'm gonna call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, 8.4. Right, proof of drinking water and wastewater, new policy. Over to you.
Thank you, Kim Needham, Director of Planning and Development Services. This is a report that's been prepared by Alex Mackay, planner. Unfortunately, Ms. Mackay is not feeling well today, so I'll be pinch hitting for her. Essentially, what this report describes is that we have an existing proof of water policy that's been found to not align with the provincial regulations. And so we are trying to create some alignment and also adding some policy guidelines for wastewater disposal in the region, which we don't currently have outside of the Area D master plan communities. So essentially, we would be replacing the old policy with a new policy that has better provincial alignment. And we did consult with Ministry of Transportation, the coastal health authorities, as well as who else did we consult with? Maybe that's just it. And they weighed in. So Modi does have a guide to rural subdivision approvals, and so this will align with that better. Yeah. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to try and respond.
Any questions? I thought the report was pretty thorough. Great job. Someone like to move the recommendation that we rescind the old policy and replace it with the new policy, moved by Director Richmond, seconded by Director Rainbow. Comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Thank you.
We have a break now?
We have 8 minutes.
I'll see.
Okay,
There's no hospital board meeting now.
no, but it's been a long day. We all got it.
That meeting.
Yeah, okay.
I understand, but we all, yeah, it's too long. Otherwise. We can deal with one more item. Information report regarding the Britannia Beach sewer system. What?
Laura Butt, Director of Environmental Services. I brought a report to the last board meeting and was directed to bring additional information back on this Britannia wastewater proposal. Hopefully I answered some of the questions. There was 2 sites that were discussed. The one site has no way of easily getting to Britannia Beach, and it doesn't really make sense to come there. But the second one goes past Britannia Beach. So that would be a pretty easy one to accept. I have checked with legal, and the simplest way to do this would to amend our service establishment bylaw and add one line under section 2, which says the board may enter into contracts to provide sewage collection and treatment within the service area. And there could just be another line added that says to accept trucked domestic wastewater from outside the service area. And that could be a request for a decision can be brought to the board anytime there's a proposal like this, and they can make a decision if they want to accept it or not. And I would likely ask legal to help draft an agreement, because this is a different type of service that normally it's the opposite, where we're contracting someone to provide a service, and it would be us providing a service. And then these costs could also be covered through that service agreement with the provider. And I will be open for questions.
Questions? Don't see any questions. Would anyone like to make the motion?
Actually,
Go ahead, question, Director Herford.
I just wonder if in the, so the proposal as it sits is that we do sort of a case by case as if we'd accept the waste. Is that what we're?
Yeah, if we would amend the bylaw first, if that's, and then, yes, I would bring another request for decision to the board and propose number 2 and say, would you like to accept?
Right.
And yeah, the board can make that decision at that time. And then again, if another proposal came up in the future, I would bring I feel like the board would prefer that option to be at the board's discretion.
Okay, and it speaks to the report speaks to like where the costs that would be covered through the service agreement with the provider and so on, but if we're gonna do that work, do you have an idea of how much that's gonna cost? Because if we're spending $10,000 to recover $5,000 in opportunity of doing this processing in the short term, like do you have any way of understanding that, or is that something that'll, like, I feel like we're about to unleash some work, and I get that it'll be covered in the mechanism for, but I'm not sure the value of doing that without understanding that a bit better, if that makes sense to everybody.
I think the legal cost would be the bigger one. Obviously, there's some staff time involved. The amendment is not much, if we just add the one line. But it's also could be a discussion with this contractor to upfront these costs.
Sometimes I've found in general this sort of agreement, once you sort of open the door a little bit, then it becomes, you no longer have discretion to say no for this reason, that reason, that reason. So you kind of have to say yes because you've opened the door a little bit. Do we have confidence that if still bringing it to the board would have full discretion sort of for any reason to sort of say, we do or don't want this, or would we be accepting a whole bunch of, well, no, you kind of got to accept it, except for this really rare case?
No, so that's why I would suggest that on a case by case basis is brought to the board. And you can say you want to accept this amount from this location, and then I would go back and do a contract with that contractor. And then it doesn't leave it up to staff to pick and choose. And
And then it would be at this sort of future discussion, we would decide what sort of for sort of out of system waste, our expectations of testing or monitoring or validation of what's going in and how we would manage that, our expectations there. That's a discussion we would have at that point.
yeah, and it could be something that we add into the contract as well. Like at the time when I bring a request for decision, the board could say, we want to have these conditions. And then I could go back and put that in the contract.
Director Mayor, and then I'll come to you.
I just got one question. It looks like you've got in here that it would be brought to the board on the June meeting. Your timeline?
That's if the it has to go to the inspector of municipalities, and if they take 12 weeks to respond. But they also could very well be much quicker than that. So for the bylaw amendment, that's what will be anticipated.
Okay, thank you.
Director Rainbow, question?
Yeah, would it be correct to assume that the work you're doing on this, which is to do with Britannia wastewater treatment plant, that cost center would be covering your time for that?
That's correct.
And then any funds that are generated by this process would go into that Britannia Beach wastewater treatment cost center.
Yes,
Great, thank you.
and they are anticipating this project to be as long as the WLNG project goes for multiple years.
And is it also, my understanding was that when that wastewater treatment plant was built at Britannia, it was built way beyond the capacity that we have at the moment. And so this is actually beneficial to the operation of that equipment.
Yeah, and I mean, this is still a very small amount.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Through the chair, I am curious why the legal costs and corporate services costs wouldn't be then billed to that cost center, but they'd be billed to general government.
The legal cost would be billed to that cost center,
Oh, they would
but
be.
corporate services time is all in
That's
general.
fair, yeah. And then my other question was, is there any rationale, so if we do direct staff to change the bylaw to allow for sewage from outside the service area, but to scope it accordingly, perhaps like from within the regional district? So I'm just unclear like what sort of demand there is and whether we're shifting this to being like an entirely different fee for service model for the Britannia Beach water sewer system. If we open it up, then we have like people knocking down our doors from Metro Van because they're have $400 million wastewater treatment plant issues, or is it? So I'm just curious if there's like a geographic scoping there, like yes, from outside the service area, but maybe from within the regional district?
Yeah, that's up to the board.
Okay, great. And that would be a future decision? Or do you want that directed?
Well, that could, I think that should be directed, because if we amend the bylaw, that should be in that. And also, if we wouldn't have to amend the fees and charges bylaw, but that also still allows us to, in a case of emergency, accept wastewater from, a situation that's ours.
I comment, I think an outside possibility that maybe Lions Bay might, if they had a problem, we might be the closest people to them to help solve it. But if something like that happened, then they could just ask and they would come to this table. So.
But again, in a case of emergency, we have the ability to accept that.
Really? Okay, good.
Would anyone like to move first that we receive the report?
Yes.
Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Stoner. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Would anyone like to make an additional motion? Go ahead.
I'll move that we direct staff to proceed with an amendment to the Britannia Beach sewage collection and treatment service establishment bylaw to allow sewage from outside the service area.
Okay. Seconded by Director Herbert. Comments? Go ahead, Director.
Yeah, I'm not supportive of this, and I know we'll have a future discussion about particular sources, but I think I would like to see some more constraints about when we would accept it. I think what I've seen with water bylaws and so on is a real push to minimize water use and sewage use, and I understand we maybe overbuilt this. There may be more residential development that requires the size, but for me, I'm uncomfortable setting aside the initiator of this particular discussion, doing things to facilitate greater water use and sewage production. For me, that feels an uncomfortable direction to go. Maybe we can deal with that by setting significantly high rates. I'm glad to hear, dealing with stuff in an emergency is one thing, but as general sort of going down a path of encouraging and facilitating greater waste production and so on is uncomfortable for me.
Any other comments from anyone else? Go ahead, Director.
I think this is totally appropriate when this type of wastewater is quite a unique service where we have the opportunity to sort of monetize that in a way that supports the residents of paying that cost center. And I think it's worth exploring that. So I'm happy to take this step and look forward to those future discussions about what actually ends up there. But I think having the ability to should at the discretion of the board is totally appropriate. So I'll be supporting.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, so the motion is to accept the wastewater from outside of the service area, but we're not capturing that, but within the regional district, or is that just something to talk about in future? Did we want to capture that?
Through the chair, I didn't include that in my motion in thinking that we would capture that at a future date. I heard that staff would bring back any applications please out to this board. And I feel comfortable leaving it at that, given that there might be differing reasons why something may come forward.
Other comments? Call the question, all in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Sorry,
Director Penney-Gill opposed.
opposed. Thank you. And I will ask for someone, or I will declare a recess of this open board meeting until tomorrow, immediately preceding the whole. We'll see you tomorrow.